Well, my name's Jack. I'm 57 years old, and I have a military background. I have a firefighter paramedic background, and I have a background in law enforcement. I've been in the woods since I was old enough to walk. First part of my life in Alaska, and then the East Coast, and then eventually the West Coast, and back to the East Coast. But 2022, excuse me, about it was the first part of December, I started hearing whistling outside. And it went on for probably 2 weeks. And I was trying to figure out what it was. And I'd ask the family if they were hearing this. But this was in the middle of the night. I don't sleep good, so most everybody's asleep. Nobody had heard a thing. And one night I was hearing the whistling, and I looked outside. I looked out the front door first, and I didn't see nothing out there. Then I went over to the window because I heard it kind of over in that way, and I looked down because there's a concrete pad on the first story down there, and there's lumber stacked up, and it looked like there's a bear down there on the lumber and messed around by the lumber. And I went over to my desk, got my night vision scope out, and I put it on it and was watching it, and it stood up, and it wasn't a bear. It wasn't a human, and it was big and hairy, and I didn't know what it was. I stewed on this for a while. I didn't tell my wife about it or the family about it because I really didn't want to sound like I bumped my head, or it was processing it is also the reason it took so long. I've been an open-minded person, but you find out how open-minded you are when you see these things for the first time. It really is a shock to you. I stepped back and I just was flabbergasted. And from that moment on, I couldn't even tell you what I did. I probably went over and sat down, but I mean, my head was wrapped up in this. And it was a few weeks later, my wife finally pinned me down and asked me what was going on because she knew something was bothering me. So I explained it to her. I hadn't said anything to the boys. And then it was shortly after that, I was hearing whistling again. So the first thing I did was went to the window. And I could see this thing down there by this lumber pile. I'm assuming it's picking up bugs and worms and eating them. So I went down around the end of the house, down the long driveway, around to the lower shop, and then out on the concrete pad. But I did it to where I was in the shadows and trying not to make noise. I made it to the sliding door on the side of the barn and looked across the concrete pad, and it was sitting there, eating bugs or whatever. And the wind, and I was probably there for 6, maybe 7 minutes. It seemed like forever, but I was there for quite a while. And I was just kind of stunned because I could not believe what I was seeing. Well, when I went down, I put a gun on me, and I kept it on my belt. But I went down, and I stand by the door, and when the wind comes out of the north, it'll take the door and lift it up and drop it down a little bit, and it'll slam against the side of the barn. And it did that, and it looked over at me in the door, and it jumped up and took 2 large strides towards me, and it covered quite an area. And at that time, I put my left hand out in a pumping motion, pumping downward, and I said, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I reached back for my gun, and this this animal stopped and looked up at me and mimicked me pumping up and down with my hand. It did it maybe once or twice, but then we just stood there looking at each other. And out of being flabbergasted or whatever, I run my hand across the top of my head, just staring at this thing, and it did the same thing. It run its hand across the top of its head. And, honestly, I'd never been in a fight or flight situation. I mean, I have, but I've never froze. It's always been fight. And I froze there. I didn't know to laugh or cry, because it was mind-boggling, literally. And I don't get rattled. kind of mumbled, grunted, whatever, and it pointed back towards the pile of lumber, but it didn't use a finger. It was his 4 digits were curled up, like if you curled your fingers up, it pointed with its fingers curled up at the pile. And then I just sat there for a while and watched it, and it just turned its head and it walked over to the left, and it got to the edge of concrete, and it sat there studying the ground, looking around, and then it slowly stepped out, and then it was purposely stepping in different areas. And I thought, okay, that's odd. I didn't think a lot about it. The next morning I went down there and looked, and everywhere this animal was looking and stepping was grass. There's clay all around there. It was trying to hide its tracks. And I've heard whistling since, but I haven't seen it again since. Now, I did put a banana and some oatmeal cookies out there, but my wife's cookies could draw on anything. They're good. So who knows what got it. But it was very surreal is a good word for it.
Can you describe the physical characteristics?
Well, I'm 5'11". It looked like it's maybe 6'4". His shoulders maybe a foot or so wider than mine. And through what little light I had from the window and the ambient light outside at night, because this was probably 3 a.m, it looked like it was kind of a reddish brown in color. Not real bright red, but a sedate red. And when it turned, I could see the silhouette of its face, and it was not real flat, but flatter than like a monkey would have. I do remember a pronounced brow line on it. And the hair was maybe 2 inches, maybe 2.5. It just wasn't real long. But its hands were huge. When it pointed back, its hands were twice the size of mine easily. That is an incredible evening.
How far away was it from you?
After it took 2 steps, it was maybe 35 foot away.
And I know it's nighttime, but could you see any details of the face?
Just the silhouette of it. You could see its, the shadows of it, but I mean, it had wider nose, but I mean, as far as texture on the face or anything, I couldn't see it. It was too dark down there.
Any other questions?
I think you covered most of what I've got, but that first time when you saw it, when you looked out of your window that night, how far was it from the window?
45 foot, but I was down there, I'd be on the 2nd floor.
Right.
Where down there, he'd be on the 1st floor down by where that is at.
So was there any illumination?
There, you could see some light from the windows. Now, we changed some stuff in there, so it's different, but you could see, it shines down there to a degree. And then it was not real dark out that night. The moon was out, so you could see with that as well.
Did it see you?
The first time?
Yeah.
No, not that I know of. Not that I know of.
But it definitely saw you the second time.
Oh yeah, yes, yeah. It definitely saw me, and I seen more than I wanted to see that night. But
did it seem shocked to see you?
At first, yeah. Because I think he's been coming there for a while, or it. I think it's been coming there for a while. I mean, that whole deck was covered with wood when we moved in here a year ago. We've been getting the garbage out and cleaning it up and everything.
Can you just briefly describe your property here?
Well,
the surrounding area.
We're sitting in a wooded area. It's 28 acres. We have a total of 2.25 acre pond, and it's pretty much all wooded, except for where the house is and something like that. But it's pretty dense woods here.
And you mentioned about this property being vacant for a year?
It was vacant for about 2.5 years.
2.5 years it was
Yeah.
vacant
Yeah.
before you got here.
Yeah.
And now your son had a recent sighting just a couple days ago.
Yep.
Do you want to share that sighting real quick?
So that would have been the night of January 9th, about 8:30 at night. My brother and I were out splitting and getting firewood brought into the house for the night, and he'd just gone into the house to grab something, probably a jacket, and I'd looked up and thought I saw a glint from something reflective in the woods that lined the edge of our driveway. And when I went to look again, it was gone, so I dismissed it at first. Well, after that, kind of just kept splitting firewood, getting another wheelbarrow load to take into the house, and heard the door open from my brother coming back. When I looked up to greet him again, I saw movement out of the corner of my eye, and when I turned and looked up one of the side logging roads that crisscross throughout the property, there was a gray figure with kind of a hunched over gait walking across the logging road up there, heading from right to left, and it had in silhouette more of a flatter face. It didn't have a pronounced snout or anything like that, and it was more of a gray coloration. And it's hard to gauge height from distance, and it being like partially over the crest of the hill up there. So I couldn't tell you how tall it was, but I don't know if it had just been hanging around and the glint that I saw was it watching us, seeing what we were doing that late at night, or if the initial glint was something else. But certainly spooked me the first time I saw it, especially after hearing my dad's experience and thinking about how he described it, and then seeing something else and then not lining up. Didn't know if it was another one or if I was seeing something else, but pretty sure there's more than one of them hanging around.
So Chris, it was dark at that time.
Yeah.
Was there any light around where you were?
We've got a street light mounted on top of one of the power poles pretty much directly over where we were splitting wood, and the creature that I saw was hovering just at the edge of where the light starts to peter off. So you could see it, but not a whole lot of detail. More just a general shape and color than any real definitive details.
The glinting, was it like a reflection?
Yeah, it's that. My first response when I saw it was if it was like an eye or something. But when I looked again, it was gone, so I kind of just dismissed it at first because I couldn't prove if there was something there or not.
Like an eye shine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I was originally going, okay, that's kind of weird, and that set me on guard more, so I was paying more attention to any movement. And it just so happened that as my brother was coming back out into hearing the door open and close, caused me to look up, and when I looked back up from the wood that we were splitting is when I saw the movement and looked up and saw it.
You've got dogs here. Have you
We've got
had
4 of them.
reaction? Yeah, any reactions from the dogs?
I don't know about him, and I don't remember if they were acting up that. And I know the second sighting, it was cold and we had the door shut for the doggy door so they wouldn't get outside. The first night, I don't remember. I honestly, that was a long time ago.
And that would have been the same with my sighting. I'm pretty sure the dogs were closed in because the door was closed.
One of them is the Belgian Malinois. She's not afraid of nothing.
You react to most things, I guess.
And
Yeah.
there'll be times, in the middle of the night, she'll go out and start carrying on and barking, and it's an intimidation bark.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gotten up and looked around, didn't see nothing, but she's seen or smelled something.
I just got one last question. So that first time that you saw this creature through your window, and then the second time when you left your property and you went out and you pretty much came face to face with it, do you think it was the same one?
Absolutely.
What
Absolutely.
makes you
It's
think
about
that?
the same height and same, when it was bent over, it really was the same size and looked like what I'd seen before. So positively, no, it could have been another one. I mean, who knows for certain, but in my rational mind, looking what I've seen, it looks to me like it could very well be the same one.
And how would you describe its physique?
Wasn't fat. You could tell it was tone. Wasn't big bulging muscles or whatever. It was tone. It was. It's like I said, probably about 6'4", and its shoulders, I don't know because I've never to guess, but I got pretty broad shoulders, and it was a foot or more wider than mine, and its head was bigger than a human's by far. If I had to guess, it's probably 14, 15 inches from chin to top of its head. It wasn't small.
Was you able to see a shape of its head?
Somewhat. I mean, you could see the silhouette of it, and it had a taller head from brow to the top than a human, but it's hard to say. It was rounded, but not straight up and down. It had just a slight crown to it, I guess. So that's about all I could say is about, because it was dark down there.
Yeah. Sorry, last question. Did
Sorry.
it appear to be covered head to toe in hair, or did it seem to be patchy?
It looked patchy. It wasn't totally covered with hair. You could see areas that, if not bald, thinned real bad. I mean, it was not like a dog would be covered with hair.
And could you see skin at all?
Like I said, it was dark down there. So it was, like I said, if it wasn't bald and it may have thin hair on it, it's hard to say.
Okay.
And you said you're a veteran,
Yes, sir.
and you also
8 years.
8 years veteran, and then you've hunted.
Since I was legally able to hunt.
Yeah.
But I've been in the woods since I was able to walk.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad and mom and our whole family was in the woods all the time.
And how old are you now?
I'm 57.
57. I really appreciate you sharing this story with us.